Got asked this question about what genre is, and it sort of floored me because I realized I haven't thought about genre for a while. A lot of us know what genre our favorite pieces of fiction fit into. We know whether they're cyberpunk, fantasy, science fiction, horror, romance, drama, historical. We know what category they fit into. And that's effectively what genre is. It's a category system. Genre is a way of communicating to your audience what to expect in your work. So if you have written a piece of work and you know what genre it fits into, you know what kind of market to go after when you are pitching it to publishers, potential readers, or even editors, because editors tend to focus on a certain form of fiction in their work. They don't usually edit a whole lot of stuff. Some do, they're very generalist, but the best editors tend to focus on a particular field of fiction to deliver a better editing service to the writer. So that's the first thing that genre is. It's a labeling system. It's kind of archaic because it is very simple and it's based on publisher marketing. A publisher needs to know what genre a book fits into so it knows how to market it. So what cover art to put on it, what bookstores to put it into, what demographics to advertise it to. It's a bit old hat now because with things like Amazon, iBooks, Google Books, Kindle, you can do away with the genre label, and all you have to do is attach a certain number of hashtags to your work, and the algorithm will find your readers because it will promote your book to the readers most likely to buy it. And since it is algorithm based, it doesn't have to be, so a publisher has to be very broad and very general in how it approaches its marketing because it's trying to sell as many copies as possible. But because of the internet, genres don't have to be broad and generalized. They don't have to be just fantasy. They don't have to be just sci-fi, just horror, just supernatural. You can get really niche work, and because the internet allows you to access readers from all over the world with all different kinds of interests, you can reach those readers who are seeking a very niche, very specific kind of work. That's one of the pros if you decide to go quite niche early on in your writing career, because it's easy for you to find and carve out a niche if you've got a specific kind of writing style and subject matter, but it can be hard to pitch it to a publisher because a publisher. So, for example, with me, this is the choice that I made. I picked a science fiction political crime thriller, so there's a couple of elements going on there. So I might pitch it as a science fiction book, but people will go, it feels more like a crime book than a science fiction book. I might pitch it as a crime book to someone else, but then they'll go, because it's got laser guns and flying cars, it feels more like a sci-fi book than a crime book. So there's pros and cons no matter which way you go. But either way, that is the importance of understanding genre, knowing how to find your audience, but also knowing that you don't have to go super broad general genres of the traditional publishing houses, because if you self-publish or if you only do an ebook, the internet will help you find your audience because you're accessing a much larger market than a traditional publishing house would by just putting your book in the stores. The second reason why it's really important to know the genre of your book is because genres create expectations in the reader. If you as a reader pick something off the shelf and it's in like the Western section or the fantasy section, you are going to be expecting a certain number of conventions in that book for it to be able to say that it is a Western or a fantasy. If it doesn't have those conventions, you as a reader can get very disappointed because you can feel like you've been falsely advertised to. You've been sold a product and it hasn't lived up to what it said it was. So remember, that applies to your other readers, to the readers of your work as well, because you need to know, if I am creating a piece of work in this genre, what are the conventions in this genre that I must follow to make sure that my readers get a full, satisfying experience reading, or in the case if you're writing a screenplay, watching my work. So what's some examples of that? An example of, so this is such a common trope. So trope being another word for a convention, is in the spy thriller genre, the idea that the bad guy will strap the spy into some elaborate death device, but he will then take the time to explain his master plan to the spy and how it will work, and then they will just walk away and of course give the spy time to escape the elaborate death trap and then destroy the evil villain's lair or plan for world domination or what have you. We question why these things happen in movies so much, because we go, it's so freaking illogical. Why can't the bad guy just cap the spy right then and there when he's got him in his power and there's nothing he can do, rather than just strapping him into an elaborate death machine and walking away? I mean, that was parodied in the first Austin Powers movie when you had Dr. Evil put Austin Powers inside an elaborate death device and say, no, I'm just going to walk away and assume that everything will work out. But then again, that was a parody, so obviously it's going to point fun at a convention. But anyway, the reason why you need to know what these conventions are is so that you can deliver those conventions to the audience, because when you're selling a particular book in a particular genre, the audience will expect a certain number of conventions once they've picked that off the shelf. They're like, okay, I've picked a fantasy off the shelf, so I'm going to be expecting magic and sorcerers and fantastical creatures like dragons. I'm going to be expecting castles and armies clashing and far-off worlds with all different kinds of wondrous things. If you don't deliver that, then your audience is going to go, well, I read this book, it said it was a fantasy, but it didn't feel like a fantasy. And that's the common point of feedback when you do not deliver the core conventions of your genre. The average moviegoer or reader, who probably won't analyze this stuff as much as I do, or as much as you guys are on this journey with me, they'll go, it didn't feel like a war movie, or it didn't feel like a thriller, it didn't feel like a horror. The reason why they say that is because the thing that they watched or read did not deliver the conventions or the familiar beats that they as an audience member expected going into the movie. Now, a lot of people who are, for instance, your pantser type writers or your Gardner style writers, they're the same kind, but they're the ones that like to just create and go, and then they trim it back and edit it back as they go. They're not really big fans of structure. They will go, you do not need to follow these sorts of conventions. You can just go in your work, and you should just go in your work, because you shouldn't be trying to create cookie cutter stories. Now, the reason why they say that is, well, because first of all, that's their writing style. But the simple fact is that if you do not, it's a bigger risk if you do just go and not deliver the conventions of your story, because at the end of the day, the audience member or the reader is the one who will decide whether your work is fun, whether it's enjoyable, whether it delivers them an experience. And you can still deliver a good experience by following those conventions, but by following them in a unique, creative, original way. So if you do just follow the standard steps of a fantasy and you just smash something out that looks like it could have been written by a computer or by a committee, then you're going to hit all the beats of a fantasy, but you're not necessarily going to deliver a great piece of work that people will enjoy reading. What you want to do is find the familiar beats of a fantasy, but then find a way to deliver them in a unique and original way. So the classic one would be Game of Thrones. So in Game of Thrones, spoilers if you haven't seen to the end of season 1 of Game of Thrones, obviously Ned Stark, the protagonist, he is executed. We expect in a fantasy that the main characters are going to make it. We're going to be with them all the way through the story. It's going to be their struggle, their tale, and eventually their triumph, but we're going to be with them all the way. The idea of killing off the person who was purported to be your main character at the end of the first book, that is a massive subversion of the convention that we expect to see in a fantasy, and that's one of the reasons why Game of Thrones is unique as a story, because most protagonists usually, nearly all protagonists survive. That's why they're protagonists. But in this case, that was not so. So, in summary, you need to know what your genre is so that you can find your audience and so that you know how to pitch your story to publishers, editors, and so forth. But you also need to know what the genre of your story is so that you know which conventions to deliver as part of it. Of course, the way you find out which conventions to deliver in your genre is you read heavily in that genre. That's a bit of advice that if you've been on this channel before or on my TikTok, you will have heard before. You need to read in the genre that you want to create so you can recognize, these are the familiar beats, these are the patterns that I expect, that I'm now expecting to see. These are the beats and the patterns that another reader would expect to see. Because here's the thing. Readers read in a particular genre because they like that pattern, because they like those tropes and because they like those conventions. And if you don't deliver that, then you're not delivering to the reader what they want. And if you want your work to be read, you have to give the reader what they want. You don't have to dumb it down for them, make it stupid or make it formulaic or make it predictable. You should strive to make it creative and original, but they are expecting something, and it is up to you as a writer to deliver that to them. So that's everything for today. Give me more questions, like the video, buy my book, link in the description. Ask me more questions. I give me all the questions you need because I like answering these more long-form questions on YouTube. And as always, happy writing.